Okay, 2-3 minutes are over. I'm happy that more people are coming, but I think we need to respect time and we need to start. I fully appreciate that you want maybe to learn more about motivation, and most probably that's why you are here. Thank you very much for attending the plenary in the morning as well. So more or less, these two talks, they the same umbrella of positive emotions, even though motivation is a very general, and I think it concerns all of us. I will try again to read some people's minds, and I think, and I'm 100% with you, maybe the first thing that comes to your mind is, George, who are you to talk to us about motivation, which I totally respect. Actually, that was one of my concerns, because I've been investigating the issue for more than 10 years right now. I feel that it concerns me as a human being and as a teacher, and the more I'm looking into that, I feel that it concerns more and more people, because consciously or subconsciously, motivation is part of my life, or your life as well. However, in this process came a lady who is not a scientist. She is not like an academic, but she spoke a lot to my heart, and she said actually something, a phrase, which again stuck on my mind, changed my perspective, and the more I was reading it again and again and again, I eventually thought that maybe she's right. And I'm talking about Mel Robbins, that she's like a motivational speaker. You can find a lot of her videos on TikTok or on YouTube. She's more like a philosopher of life, but she actually said this phrase on one of the podcasts that has I don't know how many million views, and the title of the podcast is Motivation is Garbage. And the first thing you are hit by this phrase, then of course she explains, and I couldn't agree more, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but when she says that motivation is garbage, means that if you expect that you are going to be seated somewhere, doing practically nothing, maybe reading a book or watching a talk or a podcast, and you are going to be motivated and inspired, maybe it's never gonna come. So the meaning of this phrase was very much aligned to my research. And I realized eventually that her point was that motivation is another skill. It's something acquired. It's something that we need to invest if it is to come and find us. It cannot come from above all the times. And this changes the whole perspective of us wanted to be motivated, sometimes feeling that things are boring in our lives, in our teaching. We are looking for this change all the time, but we don't really know what can actually motivate us. Maybe because at that particular moment, we have to do something about it. And if you are still not convinced about this, let me tell you that here you can find some very simple everyday examples that in our everyday life, we need to motivate somebody else to do something for us. Daddy, can you please help me with my homework? Sweetie, can you please tidy up your room? Honey, would you please do the washing up for me today? We constantly asking people to do things for us. And if you want to go into a school context, can you please stop bringing food in the classroom? Maybe you say this phrase a lot during your everyday. Is it possible that you stop making noise while I'm delivering the class? This is, again, a kind of motivation that we ask from other people. So I think another second reason, apart from just being a skill that we need to learn and maybe be aware how to do it, is a recurring life pattern. It's always, every day, I would say sometimes even in every single moment, we constantly seeking or trying to give motivation to other people. So I don't think it is to be neglected. This is an important issue. And if we are to start from somewhere, trying to locate where exactly you can find motivation in the human brain and in the human existence, I would quote from neuroscience, and I would go straight to the limbic system. The limbic system is a small part of your brains. Maybe you already know about that, where all the emotions lie, every single feeling that you have, the connection that you have with other people, which might be very much related to motivation as well, and of course some autorun functions which they may seem irrelevant to the topic today, but I think they are very relevant because this is exactly our comfort zone. It's the zone in our brain that says, don't do that, stay where you are safe, you are good, you're having a good time, you don't have to go one step further. It's a very natural process, procrastination, postponing things, not resist being reluctant to change. It's a very natural process of your brain. So if you feel like that, don't feel guilty. Just try to realize it and maybe do something about it if you want, because that's maybe where motivation is going to happen. And not only that, these are the good news. There is a villain in that story. Actually, this talk is a lot about villains, and we're going to talk about more later on. Let's watch the video, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. I hope that the technology won't betray me, and then we will discuss about this more.
When we hear the word emotion, most of us think of love, hate, happiness, or fear. Those strong feelings we experience throughout life. Our emotions are the driving force behind many of our behaviors, helpful and unhelpful. Just where do our emotions come from? Our brain is wired to look for threats or rewards. If one is detected, the feeling region of the brain alerts us through the release of chemical messages. Emotions are the effect of these chemical messages traveling from our brain through the body. When our brain detects a potential threat, our brain releases the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol, which prepare us for a fight or flight response. When we detect or experience something rewarding, such as someone doing something nice for you, our brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, or serotonin. These are the chemicals that make us feel good and motivate us to continue on the task or behavior. In these instances, the feeling region of the brain kicks in before the thinking part. Sometimes the reactions of the feeling brain are so strong that it dominates our behaviors and we're unable to think rationally in the moment. Our emotions hijack our brain. While many of our emotional responses happen subconsciously, our thinking can influence our emotions, and sometimes this can be unhelpful. Just thinking about something threatening can trigger an emotional response. This is where we can manage our emotions with conscious thinking. Our emotions play a powerful role in the way we experience the world. Understanding and regulating our emotions through our thoughts and behaviors can help us take greater control of our brain and achieve our goals.
I'm sure you all have heard of Daniel Goleman. He's the father of emotional intelligence, but he also has this amazing theory that maybe you have experienced yourselves as well. I am one of the people that I do admit that I go through this process a lot. It's called the amygdala hijack, and it's the very same moment that for a few seconds, sometimes even minutes, some people even for hours, they lose control of their rational brain, and they act only according to their emotions. I don't think that it's accidental that Inside Out was a movie that had such a tremendous success, because it was exactly about this constant tango of feelings, interchanging our moods between what is rational, what we should do, and what our emotions tells us. This is something pretty much obvious, but how overwhelming this can be for some people is something that I would like you to think for your students. You know why? Because if you are under this state, one thing is for sure: you cannot learn. When you have a student who is so emotionally overwhelmed by this specific situation, it might be anger, It might be because he's feeling that someone was unfair. It might be bullying. It might be so many different reasons that this is happening. But as teachers and educators, I feel that we need to be aware that when you are under this state, when your emotions hijack your brain, you cannot learn. What should we do? I think the first aid kit here is simply calm down the situation, take a big breath, go out for a while, relax, come back when you are ready to continue the classroom, because under this state, no matter if you are 15, 5, 16, or 60, you simply cannot focus, you cannot learn, let alone to become and be motivated. So I think we start to need to be aware where motivation can start and where it cannot. And in that trail of thought, there are two rhetorical questions that you can see on the screen. I'm afraid I don't have the answer for the first one. How fast can you motivate someone? I think it's obvious from this introduction that there are no magic wands here as well. I don't know how, if there is any kind of remedy or a thing that you can, or a pill that you can take it and feel motivated, but I do have the answer to the second question. How fast can you demotivate someone? It takes one look. It takes one word. It takes some milliseconds to crush someone's motivation. And now I want you to take this and transfer it into a school context and how cautious we should be about this power that we have, a negative one, but sometimes we may overuse it. And sometimes we may not want to do it. But I have been victim of this many times when I was a student by certain teachers that maybe it wasn't their fault, but they weren't realizing. Or sometimes me as a teacher, I may have actually crushed someone's motivation. I don't know why, just because it happened. I wish I were more aware about this action back then. And all these thoughts, I told you we were going to talk about villains, led me to research a little bit, instead of trying to find the remedy and the magic pill, just trying to find maybe what impedes motivation. Starting a little bit from the dark side, so to be able maybe to cross in the brighter side of motivation. And I came across 4, we want to call them situations, statuses, or even ideas that I think that every single educator should have in mind. Maybe some of you have actually crossed this line as well, and we are going to analyze them together. Let's have a look at the first idea for today. I will again start with a video, and I'm sure that you will get the idea immediately.
A noun is a naming word, a pronoun is used instead of a noun, an adjective describes a noun, a verb describes the action of a noun, an adverb describes the action of a verb. A conjunction joins 2 sentences together, a preposition is used to describe the relationship between a noun and a pronoun, and an interjection is a word thrown in to express feeling. Have you got it, Mr. Ishan Nandakishore Avasti?
Not only he delivers the monologue, not only, he doesn't explain, he asks, and he demands that he is understood. Maybe you have come across or you had similar teachers in your career, but I'm going to give you another hint where I'm heading. Let's make a brief social experiment. I'm going to tap with this laser pointer a very, very famous melody. Tap. Okay, it's impossible for you not to know the melody, okay? But I want you to guess the melody from my tapping. Is it clear? All right, let's do it. How many of you believe it's happy birthday? Speak your mind. The rest of you are not sure. All right, that's good for me. This...
A noun is a naming
Sorry.
word, a pronoun is used instead of a noun, an adjective
Again, sorry, this man. This experiment was conducted for the first time... Was conducted for the first time by Elizabeth Newton at the University of Stanford. The name of the experiment was the tappers and the listeners. And no matter how many times Mrs. Newton was actually playing and tapping this song or a similar one, the ratio was 3 out of 120, a very low ratio, which maybe you have exceeded it. You were very good, because in the majority of the audiences, it's exactly more or less the same. Very few people can guess it. But what she wanted to prove with this particular experiment was exactly the first villain of this talk, the curse of knowledge. The tapper knows the song in its head, knows the melody. The poor listener is like this boy here. He cannot read the tapper's mind. How can he possibly guess the melody? And that's exactly my point here, that sometimes just because we know, we assume that other people will know. It would be very easy for me to say, but it's happy birthday, don't you know happy birthday? But how can you possibly guess it through just a tapping process? Okay, some of you, maybe you have more like musical intelligence, or maybe you got it, or maybe it was the moment, fair enough. But the majority of the people cannot. And I wonder how many times this is happening to our classes, how many times we lecture, we talk, we pitch, we recite, we talk like, because we know, sometimes we even show off. But we need to realize that not everybody will understand, and not everybody will know just because we know. This is called the curse of knowledge, and it's good to have it at the back of our minds. You can find all the research online. This is a pretty old experiment, but very few. Also, Heath and Heath, the brothers Heath have written a wonderful book about this. They have a chapter where they mention it, and it's a very predominant idea in education, which I think we need to have it in our minds. Those of you who attended the talk in the morning, we talked about success, values, and happiness. But motivation, even in my generation, irrespective of how I was brought up, there was a very constant pattern that in order to be motivated, you need to have grades, you need to have rewards. So it was always this: if you get a very good grade and if you finish primary school with a good grade, you're going to get a bicycle. If you finish high school with a very good grade, you're going to get some very expensive clothes. If you pass in the university, then you're going to have some free holidays with your friends. If you bring me a degree, then I'm going to buy you a car. Okay, so it was constantly this pattern of offering like a carrot that you needed to get it in order, to be motivated. And maybe it still exists with the grades, all right? By the way, there is a very interesting book by Alfie Kohn, which is called Punished by Rewards. It's a book that, in a way, somehow it has been banned from official education. Maybe people don't want us to read this book because it completely explains in over 400 pages how this system of grades and rewards does not simply work in terms of motivation. It's simply fake. And I would agree partially. But my point is, don't ever get carried away that just because there is a reward at the end of the street, at the end of the path, at the end of the way, that this will guarantee motivation, because it doesn't work always this way. I'm talking about instrumental motivation. That's exactly how we call this in psychology. I do something, or I'm motivated because I have a goal and I want to achieve it. And it's pretty fine and acceptable, but let's also not forget that in this particular path and in this particular process, there is also the fear of failure. There are people that cannot cope with this pressure. There are students that they cannot cope with this pressure, and I would say that this is like a double-edged sword. Yes, it can lead you to motivation, It can lead you to rewards, but at the same time, it can actually create a lot of stress and a lot of failure. I'm going to show you another clip, and I will explain a little bit more on that.
You certainly don't, pal, because the good news is you're fired. The bad news is you've got just 1 week to regain your job, starting with today.
Oh, have I got your attention now? Good.
Because we're adding a little something to this month's sales contest. As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. Get the picture? You laughing now?
The movie is called Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a movie of the 90s based on a theatrical play by David Mamet. It's a very claustrophobic movie that it takes place in a real estate agency. Alec Baldwin, he's the commercial manager, and he's supposed to go there to motivate these people to sell more. Very important actors play like Jack Lemmon. And actually there are rewards here, as you have already watched. First prize, a Cadillac. Second prize, a set of steak knives. Third prize, you are fired. This specific clip has been characterized as the most demotivating speech in the history of cinema. And that's why I actually chose to show it to you, because rewards are there, but if you see these people being motivated, I doubt. Okay, so let's not take for granted that 1, 2, or 3 rewards, or this reward or the other reward will work for everybody, because sometimes it's not like that. The third idea for today comes from one of my favorite, he doesn't like to be called psychologist, he's actually like a behavioral economist. He deals a lot with how people behave and everyday behaviors. His name is Dan Ariely. And he came up with a theory that came from the Greek mythology, the mythology of my country. I don't know if you have heard of the story of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was punished by the gods to push this rock up to the end of the hill, and when he would reach the top, the rock would fall, and he would actually repeat this again and again and again. So far, so good. But Mr. Ariely says that the torture of Sisyphus is not in the actual effort. It's not in this struggle to push the rock. It doesn't have to do with his physical, corporal strength to do it. The torture of Sisyphus lies somewhere else. It lies in this cyclical, never-ending process that, irrespective how tiring it might be, it seems that it is meaningless. And it's exactly the same idea. I don't know if you're a friend of prison movies or if you were reading Lucky Luke. Every time, the guards wanted actually to torture the prisoners, they made them dig a hole on the ground, and when they were finishing that, they would put the soil back in the pit. There seems to be a pattern that is very, very torturing about the idea of futile work, doing something without a meaning. And this leads me to the third idea of dark side of motivation for today, of ticking up the boxes. Sometimes we tick up the boxes, we do our jobs as we are said, everything is prescribed, everything is according to the agenda, but does all this have necessarily meaning for us and for the people around us? It's just a rhetorical question, because if we just do our jobs and we repeat constantly the same things without knowing the meaning, it's very natural not to be motivated. And it's very natural sometimes to even be demotivated, because you get these moments, sometimes there at the traffic light, when you are waiting, to cross, and you say, why am I doing this? Why is this happening every single day? It's because maybe we suffer from this Sisyphic condition of repeating the same things. Everything is fine. No tension, no objection, no quarreling. But is there any meaning? Because if there is no meaning, there's definitely no motivation. And the last idea comes from, I think, one of the biggest neuroscientists of our times, Matthew Lieberman. He spent a lot of time in his life to prove something that I would let the video explain again, because he says it in a very to-the-point way, and then we will get back. It has subtitles, so you will be able to follow it very easily.
Well, at the very least, it should lead us to wonder about the painful experiences we've all had in our own lives. If I asked you to think about your most painful memories, you'd probably list the death of a loved one before a broken leg. But when you hear my grandmother's story, you're probably thinking that her pain is metaphorical. So a broken leg, that causes real pain, but social pain, the pain that comes from loss or rejection, maybe not so much. About a decade ago, Naomi Eisenberger and I set out to test whether social pain is more than just a metaphor. We asked people to come in and lay in MRI scanners where they believed that they were playing this simple ball-tossing game with two other people also laying in scanners. And if you were in our study, you'd control this little hand at the bottom of the screen, and whenever the ball came to you, you would decide who to throw it to next. Pretty boring stuff. But then, something interesting happens. The other two people stop throwing you the ball forever. You never get the ball again. When we looked at the brains of these individuals who had just been rejected, we saw two fascinating things. First, the same brain regions that register the distress of physical pain were also more active when people were left out of the game compared to when they had been included. And second, the more someone told us they felt bad about being left out of the game, the stronger the response was in these regions.
She broke my heart. She torn my heart into pieces. How many times you have heard this particular phrase, maybe at a love song, or maybe you have read it in a book. This man has proved that this exactly torn of heart, this breaking of heart into pieces, is not a metaphor. We were thinking that it's a metaphor and it's something like a figure of speech. It's not, because physical pain, when you, for example, fell and you break your leg, activates exactly the very same part of the brain when you feel the emotional pain. So when you feel rejected, when you feel downgraded, when you feel offended, when you feel, or you experience a terrible loss, it's exactly the very same part of the brain that it's activated when you feel the physical pain. And maybe you have in your own environment some people, specifically older ones, that when they experienced a terrible loss, probably from a person or a companion, they couldn't actually stand it for a long period of time more. They actually followed up because this burden was almost unbearable. So as educators, let's keep this at the back of our minds. It's exactly this, how fast you can demotivate someone, because when you cause this emotional pain, it's very difficult to be overcome. Well, enough with the dark side. Let's try to become a little bit jollier and maybe more positive, and let's try to create a bridge. Let's try now to cross from the dark side to the brighter side. And I will start giving you a clue by quoting from Friedrich Nietzsche, obviously one of the biggest philosophers of the previous century, but I would highly recommend that you read even one of his books even today. You will find many answers about today's questions. Life is greatest rewards spring from our experience of adversity. So this man starts giving us a clue that maybe motivation or even happier feelings or even more positive feelings do not necessarily can be found in positive things. And I have another question for you. Let's say that at the end of this talk, the sponsor of the talk, Express Publishing by the way, comes here and says, for all of you, we have a gift. You can go to a tropical paradise with your partner. You can stay there for as long as you like. There is no issue with money, financial issue, we will cover it. And even better, any kind of commitments or obligations or professional commitments that you have, we will take care of it. So you can stay at this tropical island for as long as you wish. Science fiction scenario, but let's say that it's happening, okay? My question to you is, yes, for how long you think you could do that? Forever? Ah. Any ideas?
A week.
A week maybe? A week, okay. Maybe 2 weeks? Okay. Can you figure out why? Because even this tropical paradise with the cocktails, your beloved ones, no commitments, nothing to worry about, after a certain amount of time, it still becomes boring. Okay. So maybe here Mr. Nietzsche has a point. It doesn't have to be always tropical, sunny, and beautiful in order for me to be motivated. Maybe I need the challenge. Maybe I need something different. Maybe I need something, to motivate me more. And we talked about Viktor Frankl. Circumstances only by lack of meaning and purpose. And maybe another rhetorical question for today, can we actually find this meaning and purpose in our lessons for us and for our students? Because I think motivation goes and walks in through this bridge. If we try to find the meaning, I have some suggestions and I will try to share them with you. Maybe how can we define the meaning of meaning this time in our classes. Now from the general, we will try to make it as specific as possible. Important ideas, I think, that can actually help us towards this direction. The first one, it has been said by many presenters today in various workshops, and I'm going to repeat it again and again. And I've been doing this job for over 25 years now. I think I will still keep on telling to teachers meaningful thing about learning a foreign language are not the exams, are not the certificates, are not passing the class. The most important thing is communication. And I think you can experience this every single day. My language, my native language is not English, yours is not English, but that's how we communicate and that's how we move forward. It's not about finding this great job with a lot of money. It's about being able to communicate in your everyday life with the people around you. And other people call it soft skills. I call it basic human need for communication. So the number one thing that it should be always there for you and your students is that you come to my class because you will be able eventually to communicate. And communication is not only gap-filling exercises, multiple choice, or anything, or passing the exams. Don't make it this like the way we learn Latin, because Latin is a language which is completely passive. Nobody speaks about it. So when I come to learn a foreign language, English, German, or anything else, communication is number one and the most important thing. Here I just have some of the activities that I'm sure you're aware. Anything that promotes communication, everything that makes your students fluent, trying to, moving towards fluency, even from day one, is for me pivotal if you want to achieve motivation. Because usually I get indifferent or I get reluctant to attend anything, not just a class of English, when I feel that I cannot make it. So this needs to be evident. More speaking, more communication exercises, even writing is a very important productive skill that is being constantly neglected. So I think the way to meaningful lessons go through the idea of communication every single day. There are a lot of videos in this talk, and I have another one. Do you have IKEA here? All right, okay. So I'm sure you will be able to understand this video. Another idea by Mr. Dan Ariely. Let's watch it.
A few years ago, we started looking at what we term the IKEA effect. You probably know the IKEA furniture, and one of the things about IKEA furniture is that the instructions are just not that good. When I assembled my first piece, I assembled lots of things in the wrong way. It took me a very long time. It was rather frustrating. But what I realized afterward, that I had special fondness for the piece of furniture that I created with so much effort, and so much that I kept on carrying with me as I was moving around the country from place to place. It wasn't the quality of the furniture, it was that we had an evening together, we had a relationship. And we did all kinds of experiments on this, and we found out that when we invest some of ourselves into something, we start liking that thing even more. So we create IKEA furniture, we like it more. When we create food, we like it more. When we, set up our stereo or make a garden or whatever it is, every time we create something, some from ourselves is part of it, and that creates increased liking.
I'm very happy because many of the talks that I have attended, even here, they are very close to this idea of urging and motivating teachers to do something tangible. Because the very same moment that you do something practical for your students, an activity, a project, some craft work, those of you who teach at primary, this is exactly what is happening. It's the idea of creation and connection. At the end of the day, yes, when you try to assemble these round small tables by IKEA, you may start swearing, you may start sweating, you may spend like 8 hours of your time, but at the end of the day, it's your own round table, even if it might be a little bit wobbly, or if it moves, or if it's not the best part. It's because you start appreciating your own effort and you transfer this energy to your creation. So I think we need to invest more in this idea with a lot of active learning, or anything that has exactly this very same concept of doing things, of trying to connect with the actual goal and objective of our learning. I find it very, very important. As well, ICT can be here, a web quest, some ICT projects, even a game sometimes, or even a karaoke song, they are under this umbrella of creation and connection. Specifically now that we're talking about the Generation Zen that has so many distractions from here and there, maybe we need to be one of these good distractions for them and offer something more practical and tangible, so to seek and find this creation and connection. The next idea comes from marketing. It doesn't come from learning or methodology, and it's the idea of the unique identity and ownership. And you can see these companies, they have made something really unique that really sky-high their sales. They personalize their products. Choco Mice, create your own chocolate. M&M candy, Zazzle, they sell stickers, labels, pillows, and this kind of stuff. And of course, Nike, they had one of the most successful marketing campaigns, because there was this specific pair of Nike Air that you could actually buy them and you could add your own stripe in your preferable color. Everybody wanted to buy these shoes. Why? Because it created exactly this unique identity and ownership. And there is a very, very powerful example. It's what you feel with your kids. You feel that your kids, yes, they belong to you, but somehow, just because of a lot of love, you feel that they are like an extension of yourself. It's a very basic example, but it's exactly this very same idea. And of course, I'm going to quote again from neuroscience, the brain loves what is real and personal. We like to talk about ourselves. We like to have the people being interested about what we like or what we want or we do not want. So I highly recommend that you give the floor to the students. Ask them to talk to you about themselves. They have higher chances and possibilities to get motivated, to talk to you about something they like, something they want, than something completely irrelevant. Don't be afraid to do this. It's a very, very simple transfer activities that you can do with every single possible part of your lesson. You finish some kind of presentation, a text with a specific topic, over to you. What do you think about this? How would you do it? Do you like what you read in the text? These kind of questions. It helps them to motivate them a lot. Now, the next phrase comes from a pretty old paper from 1991 from Mr. Cook. And the truth is that I had to read it something like over 23 times before I highly and perfectly understand what this person meant. As high motivation can bring about successful learning may be the cause of high motivation. Yes, I think you understand what it says, but I felt that there was something missing there. And after quite a while, after I read this paper, I came across another piece of research from these wonderful ladies, Caitlin Woolley and Ayelet Fischbach from the University of Chicago. And they published a paper on what you can see here. They named it the gym experiment. What is the gym experiment? Saturday night, you have no plans. You decide for yourself or your partner to sit on the sofa and binge watching Netflix or any other kind of series. You are laying on the sofa, you are watching your favorite spectacle or movie or whatever, and you keep on eating pizzas, burgers, Coca-Colas, sometimes even alcohol. And you are devouring all these endless quantities of calories. Just like that. I do it all the time. There's nothing to that. Okay. Just like that. The thing is that while you're doing this, you are thinking, it doesn't matter. On Monday, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to burn all these calories. I'm going to do some extra treadmill, okay? And guess what? You never do it. Weeks pass again, and you still remain with the calories, but with no motivation to go to the gym. But what these ladies say is that it's going to be a little bit science fiction, but if there was a way, while you were binge watching these movies, while you were eating and devouring these calories, if in a magical way you could be transferred in the midst of an aerobic or exercise class, your motivation would have changed completely. And that's exactly what Mr. Cook is saying here, that if we find a way, the results of our goal to be evident and reach our destination within certain limits and rules and whatever programs we have, this can actually make us feel more motivated. Because when we are in the midst of a task, we focus on the inherent joy of the task. We forget about the pizzas, we forget about the burgers, we forget about the calories, and we are engaged in doing something more active. And that is why I am a very strong advocate of active learning. It's more or less related to what I was telling you before, but what I really love is taking advantage of every single piece of thing that I have in my hands. This is more a little bit my framework and mindset as a positive educator. I have a text. I need to take fully advantage of the text in every possible way. And when you have a text, my motto regarding active learning, for example, is not simply to read, explain the words, and answer the questions. No, you have a text, keep some notes, and then come back the other day or on the spot and give me an oral reproduction of it. This is for me the most basic form of active learning. anything else that is similar, that gets them in the midst of the task, when sometimes they don't expect it, can actually break this chain of boredom, or even, doing something that you don't really feel that may be harmless, or even procrastination, or any other negative feeling. In other words, keep them busy. Any kind of activation, and of course this requires that you have a plan, that you have a very specific lesson plan, that everything is catered from your end. This can actually procure and offer some extra motivation. In that frame of mind, I'm very much into presentation skills, which I find an amazing way of keep them busy and at the same time provide one of the most important and popular tasks and skills wanted out there. The more you practice presentation skills in English, starting even from a very early stage, the more they get the hang of it. Plus, it's a huge motivation for their confidence. Okay. So, any kind of active learning exercises, and we have 2 more points as we have 10 minutes. Good relationships aren't transactional. Imagine, specifically if we have male teachers here, that on a Sunday noon, you are invited for dinner with the whole family to the house of your mother-in-law. Your mother-in-law loves you a lot, you and the rest of the family, and has prepared a wonderful meal. Every possible good food is on this table, and after you actually finish your meal and you enjoy her handmade dessert, maybe an apple pie, which is made according to your favorite recipe, you sit at the back of the sofa, you look at the mother-in-law and say, "Okay, mother, that was delicious. How much? How much is the bill?" And it's at that particular moment that you may experience your mother-in-law throwing a knife or a fork at you, and all this is ruined. But my point after this far-fetched story is exactly the first line of what you see there, that good relationships aren't transactional, meaning that your mother-in-law does not do that obviously for money. She does it for love, and because she loves you in a way, in an unconditional way, you and your family. People are willing to invest and do more for long-term commitment and relationships. Show them that English will be needed for the rest of their lives. And practically with that story, what I'm asking you to do is to build this exact non-transactional relationship. It's more of the idea of the teacher as a coach, and usually this is built up with lifelong learning activities. I'm here to help you. I'm here to show you that what you learn in my class can be useful later on. I'm not doing this just because I want to pay a salary. And obviously this is not something that it can happen overnight. You need to invest in this idea. You need to be able to make it evident every single time. And this is usually happening with what now many publishers even and other trainers talk about, and I highly, highly support this. It's also part of the positive education framework, life skills, not only academic performance. Are you a good person? Do you have a good character? Would you actually make and develop a little bit more the positive aspects of your character? These are the exact tasks that will build this goodwill in between you and your students. And this needs to be evident. For example, something very simple, do not take for granted that the students know how to take notes or that they know how to brainstorm. We feel, I'm going to make a confession, which is a little bit sad, but at the same time it helped me realize the things that I should avoid. I'm 53 years old, and the very same moment that I go back to my childhood as a student, I cannot recall one single teacher during my primary or my secondary career. This is like 6 plus 6, 12 years. I cannot recall one single teacher to demonstrate to me explicitly how to study. Never. It was all my discovery. I had to realize after many years that I learn better things when I write them. I had to realize after many years that I can learn better things when I listen to it. Don't be this kind of teacher. Help them to learn, to find their own learning. It's that simple, but you invest in this idea of the good relationships, as I was telling you before. And the last idea for today, it's the idea of trust and goodwill. And I'm going to give you another very simple example. When you go to a restaurant with your family, you trust that the cook won't poison the food, right? Do you know the cook? No. But you trust and you assume that this is going to happen. When you go on holiday, you trust that your neighbor maybe will collect your correspondence. Maybe you don't know him that well, but you do trust him or her. You trust when you go out with your friends that one of your buddies will not drink, so maybe to drive you safely back home. And if you think about it, a society without trust is not a society anymore. And there are so many other different examples that we do every day just because we trust people. Okay, and there were so many different incidents that actually proved that. So trust and goodwill also inspires us to step out of our standard job requirements in order to excel and innovate. And this is exactly where I actually am a very strong advocate of the teacher as a coach, as I said before. It doesn't have necessarily to be a complete transformation, or you don't have to call necessarily yourself a coach, but I think there are very good things from coaching that we can implement into teaching. And the most important thing is signposting. Always being there, showing the way. This is number one. I'm always here to show you the path. If you follow it, it's up to you, but I'm always here to show you the path. Number two, it's exactly how you teach your child to ride a bicycle. In the beginning, you actually have these little wheels. You monitor. You actually are holding the bicycle so they won't fall, and they won't fall. And through this process, you gradually remove the little wheels, and they are free to ride. So scaffolding and helping for every single task that is needed, again, builds trust. Explain thoroughly, in detail. Don't be afraid to give clear instructions. Remember the tappers and the listeners. Not everybody, do not take for granted that everybody will understand. This process is what will make you and name you as their own people and teacher who can trust. I still remember in the last class of one of my daughter's graduation, there was one club which was called Literature and Mathematics. And it was a little bit of a controversy, this title, but at the same time it was very intriguing. And I can tell you, even in the last class of high school, that kids had so many other things to study. For this particular club, there was a very long queue of people who had to register, of students who had to register and attend. And you know why? Because the teacher who was running it was a real mentor, was always there every single Sunday, every single Saturday. And it was very touchy because at the end of the graduation day, all his students, over 50 kids, have prepared t-shirts with his photo and underneath the word, the mentor. That's how much he touched the souls of these kids, and that's how much they trusted him. Setting up objectives, checking the objectives, but on their own at the end of the module is a way, and always very clear scaffolding for productive skills and very clear explanation. I always highly recommend, because ELT is also my specialty, you start this scaffolding process since day one. Don't lose not even 1 minute of precious time. It will be much appreciated, and it will be a really good step towards motivating them. The same stands for speaking as well. It's a skill that is being taught. Don't expect that they will simply start, open their mouth and speaking. You need to build into this idea. Here are the main ideas that we have discussed today, and something that I failed to give in the morning. This is a paper. If you scan this, you will actually have access to the research of this talk. It's a paper on motivation. It's open source. You don't have to pay anything. You just log in and you read it. And here are my contact details. Those of you who want maybe to receive an extra handout or more information, it's a free application. You actually save my contacts on your phone and we can connect with each other for... I'm all over the social media, by the way, if you want to connect. And also, great job for APPI with this application because I got to know many of you through this app. So, I think I'm on time. Thank you very much for attending this talk as well. Thank you.